Hola, bienvenidos a un nuevo capítulo de Hablemos de Procesos. Hoy vamos a continuar la serie donde hemos estado conversando con distintos profesionales en el campo de ABPMP, que es esta organización a nivel mundial que impulsa la gestión por procesos. Y hoy tenemos a un invitado especial que nos acompaña desde Estados Unidos. Él está conectado desde Arizona. Así que déjenme presentarles al presidente de ABPMP, Tony Benedict, que nos acompaña hoy. Good morning, Tony. Thank you very much for joining us.
Buenos dias, Diego.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you here. Just so you know, we have interviewed other ABPMP presidents from chapters in Latin America and even in Spain. We've had people from Brazil, Chile, from Argentina, from Peru, Spain. So I'm glad we're able to get you here. You're actually the first English-speaking person in this series. We've actually interviewed other people from outside Latin America for some of the other playlists we're doing. But it's great to have you here. So thank you for joining us.
You bet.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about ABPMP from the past, the present, and the future. And I think it's a great way to wrap up this playlist with speaking to you directly. I've been acquainted with ABPMP for a few years now, but I'm sure the audience, if they followed some of our previous videos, we're also doing another series on the CBOC. So we're covering chapters where we're discussing the different areas for the 4.0 version and trying to get it across as many audiences as possible as well. So let's start by talking a little bit about your background. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your previous work experience and professional background, career?
Sure. Started my career out quite a long time ago, actually. You could tell by my hair, or what's left of my hair, that I've been around a while. I started my career out in sales in the pharmaceutical industry. And went back to graduate school and changed careers and moved to Arizona to work for Intel Corporation. And that was when I really became very involved in and very passionate about process. So I worked in operations, in assembly, test, manufacturing operations, a little bit of fab sort operations, but mostly assembly test. We basically were taking an old mainframe MRP system and we were implementing SAP. So we had to literally redesign all of our processes around planning, purchasing, procure to pay, the whole 9 yards. Huge transformation. And so got involved with that effort and led it for our group and just really liked doing it. So that's where the passion started. And we implemented SAP for our group. We were very successful. We did not customize SAP. We went vanilla. So we changed our processes to fit the software, which is the way you're supposed to do it. And so I was asked to lead the effort for 3 other groups to implement SAP, and did that successfully. So the whole division was on what they call out of the box SAP for manufacturing, semiconductor manufacturing. This was back when Andy Grove was still CEO. He said we should be doing all of our business over the internet, whatever that meant. And he wanted to do it all in a year. So the customer side of the business and the supplier side of the business, it was broken into those 2 efforts. So I led the supplier side and there was another person doing the customer side. And we actually went completely digital with all of our supplier facing processes in under a year, believe it or not, with SAP as the back end. At that point, I was asked to go over to IT and show them what the operations did. And so my IT career kind of started from there. And I started up a business process management center of excellence group. And that was when I got involved with ABPMP back in, 2002, 2003. And I went to a conference. I met Brett Champlin, who was then president, and I explained to him, where I work, what I was doing. And I said, hey, do you guys have a body of knowledge? Do you have training, whatever? I have a whole staff that doesn't know how to do any of this. And he said, well, why don't you join the organization and we'll create one? So here I am 17 years later. Left Intel, went into consulting. I did that for 4 years, went into healthcare, which is a completely different world. Did a lot of mergers, acquisitions, turnarounds, all process transformation type work. At an executive level, I went in as a VP of supply chain operations, became CIO, and really started doing what I would call enterprise level transformations, which is more than just one process. It's really, you're digitizing the company and how they interact with, in healthcare, it's patients and doctors and nurses, as opposed to in semiconductor where it's your supply base, plus it's also really your manufacturers. Like back in the day, Dell's still around. Compaq is not around anymore, but it was Compaq. It was Digital Equipment, which Compaq bought, IBM, etc. So there was a lot more manufacturers, OEMs at the time. So that led to developing a BOC version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0, which got released already. Developing a certification exam, which we have 2, soon to be 3. We'll also have another body of knowledge for the chief business architect level. We just finished the new exams for CBPA, CBPP, for 4.0 content. And we increased the questions on the CBPA exam from 90 to 130, and on the CBP exam from 140 to 180, because there's so much more new content. So I've been with ABPMP for 17 years, been president since 2009. So, that's 11 years, and still passionate about it. Obviously, I'm still here. And, we went global in 2010, and that went well, very bumpy, but went well. We brought standards to the rest of the world where there were no standards. So, chapters like yours and all the others in Latin America have really gotten engaged in all of this with not only the education and training, but certification, building communities of practice in your home countries, working for your companies or working for yourself. So, long answer to the question, but I hope I kind of gave you a full spectrum of sort of where it started for me and how I got involved with ABPMP.
For our audience's purposes, are you familiarized with how ABPMP started? I've always made the comparison when I explain to some of the people that I work with, that I like to compare it to PMI, for example. Just looking at them as a benchmark and saying, okay, this is what project management has done, and they've done it really well, and they've got this big institute behind, which is pushing the standard for project management. But then, how does ABPMP came to be? What prompted the foundation of this organization that said, hey, we need to come together and we need to define a standard. We need to come together and give the methodology or the body of knowledge for everybody to start adopting. Can you share a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, and I'll try to keep the answer short. When I first joined, it was really a startup. It was kind of like, hey, Brett had a BPM COE at the insurance company he worked at in Chicago. There was a couple of other people. There was another gentleman, Brian Cooper, who started Lombardi Software, if you remember Lombardi. So was Brian, Brett, myself, guy named Jack Hilty. And gosh, I can't remember everybody. Andrew Spagni. We had a couple of college professors. And in the early days, it was like, well, hey, let's just get chapters. Let's build chapters in the United States. And so we spent a lot of effort doing that, but I'm kind of going, we need to have something to offer besides a membership, right? So again, I was back to, let's put a body of knowledge together. Let's get some training or education. Let's certify people to say, hey, you're competent to do this. So it literally took us 6 years to come out with version 1. And I have to tell you that it was a very painful process to get everybody to agree on what the 9 knowledge areas were. Once we got everyone to agree, then it was, what is the body of knowledge? Well, it's really proven best practices. It's not experimental stuff, right? So if somebody's got something they're looking at, for example, process mining a couple of years ago was very experimental. Well, you wouldn't put that in the body of knowledge 3-4 years ago, because what was it? Where does it fit? Where are you going to use it? So we had to deal with stuff like that to get to what I would call standard knowledge areas. Best practices is if a best practice is really when you use that practice and you're successful 70% or greater every time you do it. So that's really what a best practice is. So that's what we decided to put in. That's why it took 6 years. Getting best practices together at that time was very difficult because there really weren't many. When we had version 1.0, we put it out for feedback. We got a lot of feedback. We started involving people from Europe who approached us. And that's when we launched and published 2.0, which was 200 and some pages, 242 or something like that. And it was hugely successful. We did the CBPP certification because it was for people who had 4 years experience, and that seemed to be fairly common at the time. After about 3 years, we said, hey, a lot more knowledge, a lot more best practices. We came out with version 3.0, added a lot more in the technology section. Europe came on board as a major affiliate. We went global in 2010, and we had literally presence on every continent and still do. And then, as you know, with the way technology's evolved, 4.0 includes well over 100 pages of just technology section that covers everything. How did the business process management systems evolve? They went from being sort of standard platforms to intelligent enterprise-based platforms. And there's all these new technologies. Some are actually being used in where, like RPA and process mining, dynamic case management, but things like blockchain, machine learning, AI, sort of the bigger umbrella, machine learning and IoT are new. So we set the foundation for what are those technologies, where might they apply, and then we gave some case studies on where they're being applied today. And a lot of it's in supply chain, which makes a lot of sense. The process mining's being used a lot in supply chain as well as in healthcare. Blockchain, right in the supply chain right away. Walmart was a big proponent of it in the beginning, and now it's really spreading. And then, machine learning is got a lot of usage in healthcare, a lot of usage in supply chain. So when we launched it, we felt like we needed to cover all those technologies in a foundational way. And the next iteration will have a lot of case studies for best practices on where to use it, how to be successful using it, et cetera. Over the course of ABPMP, I'm doing a very long answer again. So we went from startup to sort of a standards certifying organization. And then we became a lot more formal from a board perspective. I am a board certified fellow with the National Association of Corporate Directors. Went and got formal training on how to run a board, because we were just a bunch of people in a startup on a board, and we didn't have formal governance. We didn't have a strategic planning process. So I instituted a strategic planning process, have formal board governance, succession planning, which is, how we get new board members in, serving formal terms, things like that. So we became a lot more formalized. We're a much more formalized nonprofit association now. That took quite a few years. 6 years to get the first BOC, and then, kind of continue with that process and put standard processes in place to evolve the BOC, evolve the certifications, and then become more of a formal board-driven nonprofit. So it's been quite an evolution. I think whoever becomes the next president in the next whenever, there'll be a lot of really good standards in place to run the organization. We are a nonprofit, but you're still a profit and loss center, right? If you don't make any money, you can't do anything. The only thing that's different between for-profit and nonprofit is taxes. So we don't pay taxes. We put everything back into the organization. And so being able to run the organization and be self-funding, whoever that president is needs to be able to do that. Our previous president was more of he ran it more like a university and not as a nonprofit association that has to sustain itself. So it's been quite an evolution.
You commented a little bit about the presence that ABPMP has in Europe, and you've also mentioned some countries in Latin America that jumped in later. Can you comment a little bit on the footprint that ABPMP has across the world? So where are you guys right now? Are you present in every continent or not? And I know there's some versions of the CBOC that are already available in different languages as well, which appeals to getting into a broader audience and a non-English speaking audience as well. So can you tell us a little bit about what's some of the current access that people across the world have to ABPMP?
I can do that. Let me comment, because you mentioned PMI. So probably about 10 years ago, right before I became president, we looked at PMI, we looked at IIBA. IIBA looked at PMI, that's how they evolved. We looked at both of them. Okay. And we also looked at the Association for Supply Chain Management, which I'm also a member of, to look at how they evolved as an organization, how they evolved their bodies of knowledge, their certifications. What is very different for us compared to PMI, IIBA, and Association of Supply Chain Management is we said to our members, what do you really need? And they said, well, we have a lot of people that do BPM, but they don't speak English. It's not their first language. So we listened and we took a big step in getting the BOC translated. We did Portuguese, German, French, Russian, Spanish, and we have all of those translated in version 3.0 and 4.0 now. And 3.0 will be end of life this year, at the end of this year. And that has been very powerful in energizing all of the countries in Latin America now that there's a Spanish version or a Portuguese version, for that matter, for Brazil. But Spain and Portugal benefited. There's several German-speaking countries besides Germany in Europe, as well as Montreal, Canada is French-speaking, besides France, as well as other countries in Europe. We have interest for Arabic. We've had interest for Japanese and Chinese. Those take longer because finding somebody to do it is one thing, but we're licensing our own intellectual property and copyright. They want to take it, translate it, and sell it and make money for themselves without regard to our intellectual property. So again, we run a nonprofit organization and we fund everything we do. We don't mind paying people to translate, but we're not going to give you copyright to our intellectual property, right? So Japan has been challenging for that reason. China, there is no intellectual property enforcement at all. Again, we made some contact with someone there in Hong Kong. We're working through that. And then Arabic, it's just more of finding somebody who's willing to do it. We've had some interest. It's waxed and waned. But that helps really grow the profession, and it helps people. They have something to refer to in their own language, right? So if you want to know what are the 9 knowledge areas, well, you can go to the Bach now in your language. We just finished a prep course for the 2 exams in English. We're going to launch that probably the end of the month, May for sure. We will make that available for translation. So now you can take a prep course in your own language with a Bach in your own language and take the exam. And we'll also translate the exams into the local language. So there will be really no reason for anybody in any host country to say, I don't have a way to learn BPM, because now it'll be in your own language, your local language, to do that. That's very different from PMI and IIBA and Association for Supply Chain Management. Everything's in English. So if you don't speak English, you have to learn it to become a project management certified professional or a certified business analyst, et cetera, right? That's a choice that we made that's different from them. So we feel our board's very independent, and what makes sense for our membership, we're going to do.
One of the questions that I get asked the most over the past year, I guess, is when are we going to have the certification exams in Spanish? So for the purposes of our audiences, is there any estimate date that you have in mind for the roadmap for 2021 when we could expect some of these exams, particularly for the 4.0 version, that might be available for 2021 or in the near future?
Yeah. So, and I used to have a slide deck on this, and it hasn't been updated in quite some time. We had a roadmap that showed how we evolved the Bach over time and how we evolved the exams over time. And we tried to do a lot of things in parallel, which was challenging because you become resource constrained. So in order to work on the Bach, you need to be certified. Yeah. If you're not certified, we're not going to allow you to work on our Bach, because you may say, I've been doing BPM for 20 years, but if you're not certified by us, we don't know how compliant you are to our standards, right? Okay. So what we're doing this time is we launched the Bach in 4.0. We're doing all the translations into the local languages. So those will be, well, they're all out there now. All the languages I mentioned except Arabic and Chinese and Japanese. Now that they're done, and it's all 4.0, we can now translate, because the exams are all new. All new. So we'll translate the exams into those local languages. We have, I think, Portuguese will get done first, Spanish second, and these will probably be done in parallel, right? It won't be do Portuguese first and Spanish. We already have somebody who translated the BOC for us in Spanish. She said she would gladly do the exam. So we could start Portuguese and Spanish around the same time. French will be next because we have a French affiliate now. They translated the BOC. They're ready to translate the exam. We have a meeting next week with somebody from Germany who wants to translate the BOC, 4.0 BOC, and the exam. So we'll see about that. Russian is next because they already did the BOC. So that's the exam. So you'll have the BOC, you'll have the exam. We're going to release the prep courses in English. Those can be translated into the local language. So you'll be able to take a prep course. So download the BOC. If you remember, download the BOC for free in your language. Take the prep course in your language. Take the exam in your language. So that's really the plan. And again, the timing of that, we have a meeting in the next 2 weeks to figure out what all the timing is going to be. Because I don't know. So translating it from English to Portuguese might take longer than translating from English to Spanish. I don't know. I'm not an expert in either language, but I did know that when somebody who's doing the translation is actually doing that work, they say, well, I think it'll take me maybe 6 weeks. Well, as it goes on, it ends up being 8 weeks or 10 weeks. Right? Or 12 weeks. So you never know, right? They can give you an estimate. We always add a buffer to it because we know that it usually does take longer for those folks to finish it. And that's natural.
Yeah. Great. Well, there you have it, folks. If you're interested in taking it in your own language, it looks like there'll be a lot of work coming up in the next few months and a lot of available resources like Tony was just mentioning. So as we get close to finishing this conversation, can you tell us a little bit about what some of the things that we can be looking ahead for the future of ABPMP? So what's kind of like your vision of how the organization is going to evolve in the next coming years? And what are some of the trends maybe that are going to shape it or that are going to also be part or play a crucial role in shaping the future of ABPMP for the next couple of years?
Sure. So you already kind of got the roadmap for all the local language translations of the BOC, the exam, the prep course. We have one more certification that we're working on. It's a senior level, executive level certification. So, there's a business architect certification out there that is actually one of our board members, Jack Hilty, built that BOC with a bunch of other people. We were not ready to do that at the time. He went and did it. And long story short, it ended up merging with OMG and kind of got a life of its own. And it kind of exists out there. And it's primarily an IT-based certification. And it's very IT focused. Our certification for what we're calling the Chief Business Architect is really a business-oriented certification. It's really process-driven. So imagine you're a chief operating officer and the CEO says, look, we're going to acquire another company. We need to integrate this company. We need to harmonize their order to cash process with our order to cash process, and I want you to lead the effort. Well, that is an example of who that might be. It could be the CIO, could be the senior vice president of operations, could be whatever, but it's a senior executive, most likely in the C-suite, that is really chartered to do a full transformation. Now, take that coupled with all the digital technologies, which again are in the 4.0 version. We're going to take those technologies and we're going to build a BOC around the transformation itself. And we've clearly identified in version 4.0 the 3 types of transformation and how digital technologies apply to that. We're going to expand on that in this BOC. So that as an executive, you're going to get really educated, not only in process, business transformation, but digital technologies and what you need to do to lead a full effort. And that is going to be a business architect type certification. They will produce a lot of what IT will then use to support them. Okay. So it'll be very different from the existing business architect certification. They produce a lot of artifacts that, quite frankly, and there's a lot of people that would argue with me about it, but they don't get used, right? You do a business motivational map and it's a deliverable and it sits there, but nobody uses it because the chief operating officer doesn't know what the heck it is. Or they're doing capability maps, and the application people in IT know what it is, and how much of it do they really use. But again, the chief operating officer, the VP of operations, they're kind of going, what is that? Explain that to me. Our certification is going to say, this is what you need to know to transform your organization. Here's the framework, which will come out of 4.0, the life cycle framework on how to get there. So that's a big deal. So we'll have a new certification, minimum 10 years experience, a separate body of knowledge that's really going to be focused on strategic alignment. It's the first 2 phases of the life cycle framework, very deep. And then you'll have that BOC, the new certification, and the exam will be part written and part oral. So it's going to be like getting a PhD. You're going to take a written exam and then you're going to get an oral exam by the people that basically are putting the exam and the BOC together. So you'll be challenged really to answer the questions in a way that takes you down the right path. The other thing I wanted to add, Diego, was we invested in a learning management system, so an online platform. The prep course for the exams will be all of them, regardless of English or local language, they'll be there. We have approached several universities as well as registered training providers to put their own courses on our platform. So we'll have an entire ecosystem of training and education for our members on our learning management system. That's a big deal for us. That's huge. We made the decision about 2 years ago to do this platform, and there's a lot that goes into making it a reality. So that's a big deal for us. That's what members can expect. And again, it's going to be open to everybody. So if you're a member, everything will be discounted for you. If you're not a member, you're going to pay more, but it'll still be there in one place from ABPMP. So we're creating newer incentives for people to join as a member and to stay a member. So we have a certification maintenance journal that we're going to be putting out there. Download it for free. Once you get certified, you have to maintain 60 credit hours every 3 years for a CBPP I think it's 40 for CBPA. Don't quote me on that. If you maintain your membership, we'll give you 6 points. So that's 18 points without doing anything, right? Mm-hmm. So we're incentivizing people to stay as a member to maintain your credential. That's different, okay? Plus, we're giving you the whole journal. You can track everything. It's all macroed. So you do your drop downs, and it'll tell you how many points you get for doing a training session, giving a lecture at a conference, writing an article, contributing to the BOC, whatever. And so it'll all be automated in one place. So you've got the maintenance journal, learning management system, a new certification, new BOC. Those are big things to do. Takes volunteer time and resources to get it done. And as you know, we'll continue to evolve everything we have based on what changes in practice and what changes in technologies are out there.
So I want to thank you very much for your time, for the opportunity of having you here. It was a privilege getting to talk to you and getting the firsthand, forecast and vision of what's going to happen in the next couple of months on ABPMP. Are there any final words or any final thoughts you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Just to say that I hope I've outlined sort of where we were, where we are, where we're going. All of the things that are coming very quickly this year and probably in the next year. Again, it's a broader community, and there's a lot more reasons to join and be a member. And thank you all who listened to this video for your support, and thank you, Diego, for inviting me today. Certainly appreciate the time really to talk to our chapters and our members about what's going on. This was a great idea. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony. Y muchas gracias a todos ustedes también por conectarse, por seguir esta transmisión. Espero que les haya gustado el video. Y si tienen alguna otra pregunta sobre ABPMP o sobre la organización, déjenos sus comentarios y nosotros se las haremos llegar también a Tony para que él nos pueda mandar su retroalimentación. Así que muchas gracias a todos. Espero que tengan un excelente día. Suscríbanse, denle like y comenten al video. Hasta luego.